Hi, glad to see you on your channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to us. Have a good view. By the second half of October 1942, around Guadalcanal was a stalemate situation. On land, the Japanese blocked the American bridgehead, but could not capture it. Because of this, American aviation from Henderson Field Airfield continued to dominate the air. However, the Americans did not have enough forces to control the sea around the island, especially at night. Thus, a naval battle became inevitable. The only question was when and at what balance of power it would occur. Admiral Yamamoto was losing precious time, but he did not know it. The new offensive at Guadalcanal. On October 23, 1942, Japanese forces on Guadalcanal launched a new offensive against the American defensive perimeter around Cape Lunga Point. Due to heavy rains, the Henderson Field Airfield was soaked, and low cloud cover was over the sea, so the Japanese sailors were able to be active during the day. On October 25th, a detachment of 3 Japanese destroyers, Akatsuki, Ikazuchi, and Shiratsuyu, fired on American ships at Lunga Point, sinking the ocean tug Seminole and trawler YP-284, and then entered Tulagi Harbor and wreaked havoc there. In the evening of the same day, another destroyer convoy with soldiers and supplies left Choiseul. It was expected to reach Guadalcanal on the morning of the 26th. After unloading, the destroyers were to provide fire support for ground troops. Meanwhile, Admiral Yamamoto, who was en route, was anxiously awaiting the moment when General Hyakutake's soldiers would take Henderson Field Airfield, and it would be possible, without fear of the base Air Force, to attack the American fleet in the South Pacific. Even earlier, for action in the Solomon Islands, he had allocated 2 heavy and 2 light aircraft carriers, 4 old line cruisers, and 8 heavy cruisers. These ships were now kept at sea north of the Solomon Islands, awaiting orders. Yamamoto again divided his forces into 2 formations under Admirals Nagumo and Kondo. The first commanded the 3rd Fleet, the main strike force of which were aircraft carriers. The second Fleet, and the main strike force he had battleships, however, the old type Congo. New battleships were backed up on Truk, and Yamamoto did not want to throw them into battle. He himself remained on Truk aboard the Yamato. Kondo's main task was to support the troops on Guadalcanal and impose an artillery battle on the Americans. Nagumo's formation patrolled eastward to cover Kondo's ships with fighters and, if possible, to impose a battle on enemy aircraft carriers. Finally, its mission included strikes on American transports in the event of an attempted evacuation of Guadalcanal. In addition, if necessary, the forces of the 8th Fleet of Admiral Mikawa of Rabaul should enter the battle. Each of the formations, according to Japanese custom, was divided into several smaller detachments. Vice Admiral Nagumo Chuichi's aircraft carrier strike force, the heavy aircraft carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku, the light aircraft carrier Zuiho, 1st Aircraft Carrier Division, as well as the heavy cruiser Kumano and 8 destroyers, Amatsukaze, Hatsukaze, Tokitsukaze, Yukikaze, Arashi, Maikaze, Teruzuki, and Hamakaze. He was also subordinate to the advanced detachment of Rear Admiral Abe Hiroaki, line cruisers, Hiei and Kirishima, heavy cruisers, Suzuya, Tone, and Chikuma, and the 10th Destroyer Division, light cruiser Nagara with 7 destroyers, Akigumo, Isokaze, Kazugumo, Yugumo, Makigumo, Tanikaze, and Urakaze. Vice Admiral Kondo Nobutake's Vanguard Formation, the heavy cruisers, Atago, Takao, Maya, and Tiokai, and the 2nd Destroyer Division of Rear Admiral Tanaka Raizo, the light cruiser Isuzu with 6 destroyers Kawakaze, Makinami, Sudeukaze, Umikaze, Takanami, and Nagani. He was also subordinate to the Close Support Force, 3rd Division of Line Cruisers, Vice Admiral Kurita Takeo, Kongo, and Haruna, with 2 destroyers, Kagero and Oyashio, as well as Aircraft Carrier Group, 2nd Division of Aircraft Carriers, Rear Admiral Kakuta Kakuji, Light Aircraft Carrier, Junyo, accompanied by destroyers Hayashio and Kuroshio. By this time, there had been a personnel change in the command of American naval forces in the South Pacific. For indecision and pessimism, Nimitz removed Admiral Gormley, and on October 18th, appointed in his place Vice Admiral William F. Halsey for activity and aggressiveness nicknamed Buffalo. Halsey's headquarters was located in Noumea on New Caledonia, but at first he had at his disposal only one operational connection. The 17th formed around the aircraft carrier Hornet. Another aircraft carrier, the Enterprise, damaged in the Battle of the Eastern Solomon Islands, was hastily completing repairs in Pearl Harbor. Thus, by mid-October in the Southwest Pacific, the Japanese had a decisive advantage over the enemy, but did not know it. While awaiting the outcome of the Army's advance on Guadalcanal, Yamamoto missed precious time. An unverified report. Beginning on October 16th, Japanese intelligence had lost enemy carriers in the area. Since the early 20s, however, there had been an increase in American aerial reconnaissance activity. Yamamoto's headquarters had a suspicion that the enemy was preparing for something. Finally, on October 24th, Japanese aerial reconnaissance was able to intercept and decode the enemy radiogram, which mentioned a large sea and air battle expected in the near future in the Solomon Islands. On the morning of October 25th, Yamamoto informed General Hyakutake at Guadalcanal that if Henderson Field Airfield was not taken by evening, the Japanese fleet would return to Truk for lack of fuel. Upon receiving this dispatch, Hyakutake ordered the troops to attack again from their last strength. The Lunga perimeter was finally breached. A group of soldiers led by Colonel Furumiya reached the southern part of the airfield, whereupon the naval liaison officer at Guadalcanal reported that the airfield had been captured. During the night, this report was received on Truk, and Yamamoto ordered the ships to move south. The group of Japanese who had broken through to the airfield was small. It was quickly isolated and destroyed. Early in the morning of October 26th, over the airfield appeared over the Japanese Navy fighters, waiting for the signal to land, but were attacked by American planes and suffered heavy losses. However, the Japanese compound had already moved south. Admiral Halsey's anxiety. For his part, Admiral Halsey found himself in a very difficult position. At the time he took office, he had only one aircraft carrier and one battleship. In the past 2 months, the South Pacific Fleet had lost 3 attack aircraft carriers and a battleship sunk or damaged. On the morning of October 15th, they were attacked by Japanese deck planes. The destroyer was sunk, and the minesweeper was initially abandoned by the crew, but then found by rescuers and taken to Espiritu Santo. The next day, Japanese dive bombers severely damaged off Lunga Point. The old destroyer McFarland, also used for fuel delivery, Pacific Fleet Command concluded that the Japanese were somewhere northeast of the Solomon Islands and would strike on October 23rd. On that day, suspicions were confirmed. Patrolling Catalinas indeed detected an enemy aircraft carrier 650 miles north of Espiritu Santo. The Japanese force was estimated at 4 aircraft carriers. Even earlier intelligence had reported that one carrier had gone to Truk. This was the light carrier Hiyo of Kondo's subordinate 2nd Aircraft Carrier Division, which had a machinery failure on October 22nd. But the repair of the Enterprise in Pearl Harbor was going at a brisk pace. October 16th, it was completed, and the aircraft carrier, accompanied by the battleship South Dakota, at full speed moved to Espiritu Santo. Their arrival on October 24th allowed the re-establishment of the 16th Operational Force. In addition, in early October, at the disposal of Halsey was transferred from the North Atlantic battleship Washington, around which created the 64th Operational Connection. It was headed by Rear Admiral Willis Lee, Olympic champion in shooting and a distant relative of General Lee. Thus, by October 24th, Halsey already had the following forces at his disposal: 16th Operational Connection, Rear Admiral Thomas Kincaid, Heavy Aircraft Carrier, Enterprise, Battleship South Dakota, Heavy Cruiser, Portland, Light Air Defense Cruiser, San Juan, and 7 destroyers: Porter, Machen, Conyngham, Preston, Smith, Maury, and Shaw. Rear Adm. George D. Murray's 17th. Operating Force: the Heavy Aircraft Carrier Hornet, the Heavy Cruisers Northampton and Pensacola, the Light Air Defense Cruisers San Diego and Juneau, and the 6 destroyers Anderson, Barton, Hughes, Morris, Russell, and Mostyn. Rear Admiral Willis E. Lee's 64th Task Force. Battleship Washington, heavy cruiser San Francisco, light cruisers Helena and Atlanta, and 6 destroyers. The Japanese still outnumbered the enemy in the number of ships. However, their old line cruisers, in fact, were a kind of leaders of heavy cruisers and had no chance to oppose the newly commissioned American battleships. In addition, light aircraft carriers, Zuiho and Zunyo, were converted from a submarine and fast liner, so they had insufficient protection and speed in the range of 25-28 knots. Much more importantly, the American carriers carried much more deck aircraft than the Japanese. This was achieved by the design of the machines. Their wings folded upward, house, not backward, as in other countries. As a result, they could be much more compactly placed in the hangar. In addition, Halsey had an unsinkable aircraft carrier, Guadalcanal. In all, the Japanese had 203 deck aircraft, 57 torpedo carriers, 64 dive bombers, and 82 fighters. The 2 American carriers carried 177 deck planes, 30 torpedo carriers, 74 dive bombers, and 73 fighters. Another 40 serviceable aircraft were at Henderson Field, 23 fighters, 16 dive bombers, and 1 torpedo carrier aircraft. True, they were sorely lacking in fuel, supplies of which had been burned a few days earlier by shelling from Japanese battleships. Since then, fuel for the planes on Guadalcanal had to be delivered by C-47 Dakota transports. The squadrons are heading toward each other. On October 24th at 12:45 p.m., the Enterprise and Hornet groups met northeast of New Hebrides at 14-07 S and 171-37 E. The 2 squadrons met. On Nimitz's orders, Admiral Kinkaid took command of both groups. He was to pass east of the Santa Cruz Islands, round them from the north, and then move southwest to the island of San Cristobal, the southernmost in the chain of Solomon Islands, to intercept the Japanese when they approached Guadalcanal. Meanwhile, Admiral Lee, with the battleship Washington, headed for Guadalcanal to search and bypass Savo Island on the night of October 25th. However, to repeat the success of Admiral Scott at Cape Esperance failed. Just at this time, the Japanese decided to act here, not at night, but in the daytime. As a result, the enemy was not detected, and by morning, the 64th Task Force left the dangerous waters to avoid being hit by Japanese planes. At 0400, east of the Santa Cruz Islands, Kinkaid's ships turned northwest, and Enterprise put the duty air patrol fighters in the air. The Hornet was 50 cubs behind, with both compounds traveling at a speed of 23 knots. A morning search on October 25th in the 290° to 80° sector at a range of 200 miles yielded no results. However, at about 11:20 a.m., a coastal patrol plane detected an enemy formation consisting of 2 battleships, 4 heavy cruisers, and 7 destroyers. And at 12:50 p.m., Seaplane Tender Curtis relayed a report from his patrol plane that 2 Japanese aircraft carriers with a group of auxiliary vessels had been sighted 360 miles from Task Force Kinkaid. The ships were heading southeast on a course of 145 degrees at 25 knots. Coordinates of the group of battleships Scout could not give. Moreover, due to thick cloud cover and periodic rain squalls, American aerial reconnaissance lost contact with the enemy. Ships detected Catalina at noon on October 25th belonged to the 3rd Fleet of Admiral Nagumo. As in the Battle of the Eastern Solomon Islands, Nagumo positioned his carrier strike force in the rearguard, moving the battleships of Abe's advanced detachment 60 miles ahead. He hoped that American carrier aircraft would attack them rather than the carriers. Admiral Kondo's Vanguard formation, marching westward to Guadalcanal, past Malaita Island, had not yet been detected by the Americans. The Japanese, from their submarines and base scouts of the 25th Air Flotilla from Shortland Island, also knew that the American connection is east of Rennell Island and north of the archipelago of Santa Cruz. However, this information was sketchy, and most importantly, Yamamoto's headquarters on Truk did not yet know that the Enterprise had returned to the battle area just the day before. Nevertheless, from the Japanese ships spotted American scouts, and to deceive the enemy, Nagumo turned his aircraft carriers on a reverse course, while the battleships for some time continued to move south. At 2:30 p.m., 6 pairs of scouts were dispatched from the Enterprise to search the 280 to Tendig sector, 200 miles ahead. About an hour later, Kincaid ordered a strike group of 29 aircraft, 11 fighters, 12 scouts, and 6 torpedo bombers into the air. These planes were ordered to follow a midline search 150 miles ahead and return if no enemy ships were detected. The Hornet planes were still in place, in readiness for the appearance of the enemy. Already after the rise of the strike group, Kincaid received a new message from base intelligence. The enemy ships turned north. Not wanting to break radio silence and give the Japanese their presence, the admiral did not inform the strike group. As a result, the scouts returned as planned, but the strike group, because of excessive zeal of its leader, went forward not 150 and 200 miles, and then searched the sea for 80 miles to the northeast in the hope of finding the enemy. Alas, it was not possible to find the enemy. Both units Nagumo by this time out of range of deck vehicles. As a result, the strike group returned to Enterprise after sunset on the last drops of fuel. 6 aircraft fell into the water or crashed on landing. Earlier that day, the Enterprise had lost 5 machines as a result of accidents and damage. So even before the battle began, the Americans had lost 11 airplanes. However, Admiral King was now aware of the enemy's presence and was determined to find him. He had every reason to think that the Japanese would not give up the fight either, so he changed the plan of action. Instead of withdrawing for the night to an area south of Guadalcanal, as originally thought, King decided to stay north of the Santa Cruz Islands. King was right. As early as 4 p.m., Nagumo's aircraft carrier strike force turned south again. Aircraft carrier Junyo, attached to the marching 100 miles west of the Vanguard connection of Admiral Kondo, received orders from Truk to prepare their aircraft to attack Guadalcanal. At about 0:50, an American flying boat dropped a series of bombs on Nagumo's compound out of the darkness, which exploded off the side of the Zuikaku. There were no casualties, but the bombs lay so close that smoke from the explosions enveloped the bridge. Nagumo thought he had been detected and was walking into a trap, so at 1 o'clock in the morning, he turned his strike force north again. An hour later, Abe's battleships also reversed course. At this point, the ships were about 250 miles northeast of Guadalcanal. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to us. See you soon.